Hey, 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 I'm Michelle.
And I'm Gretta.
We are girlfriends who have always been seekers. We love learning, sharing, and most of all, we love having those soul-to-soul moments with our girlfriends.
Our podcast is about spiritual connection and sisterhood. You are not alone. So grab your glass, get comfy, and join us as we make some noise, light up the room, and
Get into it.
Hey, we're talking about friendship today.
What a great topic.
Yeah.
When it's good. No.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Michelle and I really bonded together through a sisterhood friendship connection and decided to create this podcast. So it only makes sense that we would want to talk about this topic and all the beautiful ways that we can connect and need to connect with other women. You know, I will say, as an almost 44-year-old woman, female friendships have been the lifeblood of my life, of my existence. Yeah, I really rely on my female relationships. And, you know, not to say that, you know, I don't have something wonderful and special with my husband, but that is something entirely different. And I think that women need to pay attention to that and really process that, because you can have a great marriage and you can have your beautiful little family dynamic, but think about bringing those wonderful female friendships into your life because they are so special.
They are. And gosh, I reflect on all the relationships that I've had throughout my life. And I have some friends that I met when I was, 5 years old, and they're still super duper close friends. But a lot of nurturing takes place in order to have those meaningful relationships. And I just love talking about all the different facets of friends, because you can have friends for a reason, friends for a season, or friends for a lifetime. I love that little saying, because sometimes friends come into your life through convenience. Sometimes it's organic, like our relationship, introduction through other friends, not knowing where anything was going to go. And then all of a sudden we're podcasting together, and have these intertwined lives. And then you have friends that acquaintances, people that you might see at the grocery store, the same checker all the time, and you know a little bit about their life. And maybe one day you have coffee together and it moves into a different friend zone area, but I think it's such a fascinating topic because a lot goes into being a friend as well as making those connections, those deep-rooted connections with people.
Absolutely. And, when I think about the women that are in my life that I consider to be friends, it does look different. Some of them, you're right, I don't see all the time, but they will always have such a special place in my heart. And when I do see them, it's like we pick up where we, like no time has passed. And it's so important to put time and energy and nourish these friendships. And as busy women and mothers, we can't always give everybody everything, but to just at least give them that value, put that effort in and be a good friend.
Yes, for sure. I have this book that I picked up a couple years ago. Could have been during COVID times, I think, when I was doing a little bit more reading and really kind of digging into things. It's called Frientimacy, and it's by a woman whose name is Shasta Nelson. And she actually has like a TED Talk, and she creates friendship circles. So the book is really about how to experience meaningful friendships. And it may not just be seeking out new people to bring into your life to have meaningful friendships with, but how do you even deepen the ones that you currently have? And I'm always fascinated by this stuff because relationships in general, however that looks, are super important. And some of the quotes throughout the book that I highlighted are kind of informational, like, though we may know a lot of people, that doesn't mean we feel we have meaningful connections. But if we don't acknowledge our need and admit that we lack meaningful connections, that we feel disconnected, we limit our chances of getting our needs met. So this really resonates with me because I am somebody that's always seeking depth. And although in my life I have had lots of friends, I just like being surrounded by people. So I like having friends. I like having girlfriends. But throughout my life, I've had moments where it's like, I like these friendships. They're good. I'm surrounded by a lot of people, but I know there's more. And so how do I get into that deeper connection with others? And what I found many ways of doing that, but like Brene Brown, I always talk about her. She talks about getting vulnerable. And that's one of the key things in a relationship is allowing you to get into that place. And you may not do that with, the acquaintance at the mall or the coffee shop or whatever.
That might not be appropriate.
May not be appropriate. To get deep all the time. But as you get to know people and you open up, they open up, now you've kind of connected in this space that's totally different than just the friendly smile or even the hug, the friendly hug. And I think especially as we in our 40s reflect on life and think about, the next 40 years, I think we start to really get into our soul about what relationships and especially girlfriend relationships look like.
Yeah, that sisterhood, that connection when someone sees you for who you really are, I think is really important. I have found that I love getting vulnerable with other women and sharing. I think that's a big part of why we even wanted to do this podcast, because I think there's so much knowledge that's gained from that and community and this just feeling of you're not alone. And I feel like I'm in a safe space and that I can totally do that when I have friendships that no matter what I say, it might come out totally wacky and could be perceived a million different ways. But those women know the core of me and they know my intention behind whatever I say. So what I don't want to do is be in a group of women where you have to pick and choose your words so carefully and make sure you say just the right thing because it might get twisted or turned. It needs to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be this mutual understanding and respect for each other.
Sure. No, I totally agree.
And that takes time.
It does. And I think it also takes some level of maturity, because I will say throughout my own journey in seeking these close friendships with people or that safety and security that you're talking about, when I was younger, that also looked different. And again, it's no judgment on like, oh, well, if you're younger than me, then that means that you're immature. I'm not saying that. I'm saying a maturity that you can have it at 20. You can be young and have that. But I think when other women show
you can be 50 and not have it too.
Total, yeah, exactly.
I've
you can be 60.
Met those women.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's when wherever you are in your phase of life, when you then connect and meet people that are where you are, because you also have to think, and this is what I love about this book also, Frientimacy, is it doesn't just talk about what that friend brings and like looking at the people on the outside. It really talks about how you're showing up. And so what is it that you're willing to also put out there so that you can also receive that back? Because you might show up thinking, oh, I want to have all these great connections, but you're sitting there completely guarded. Arms are crossed, long face, whatever that might look like. But that's not going to give off the vibe of, hey, I'm welcoming new people or, connection into my world. So these are the things that I think when you get to that maturity level of really digging into your own self and how you present in the world, that you can go to that place and go, okay, if this isn't happening in my life, let me look at myself too and see how I'm showing up.
Absolutely. I mean, I just had that happen recently. I have a great group of women friends and, I kind of was noticing that some of them were like getting together separately. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't get invited or, and then I had to sit back and look at myself. I've been very busy lately. My daughter was going off to college at the time. Like I just wasn't investing in those friendships and I wasn't having anybody over to my house. So it's not the most fun thing to do is to self-reflect, but sometimes it's necessary, especially if you want, it's a give and take. And I love that we just talked about this on our marriage podcast episode. It's like a bank. You're investing and you're taking out the money and you have to make sure you're giving as much as you're taking.
Yes, I definitely have had those moments in life too, where as I show up in friendship circles and I walk away, or even in the moment, I'm thinking, gosh, I am feeling really out of place right now. I'm feeling like my soul is actually being depleted of good energy. I don't want to be here right now. And there's been moments where I've had to step away and go, okay, is it the group? Is it me? What's happening? And like you said, sometimes there's that convenience factor where people they're busy and they're just not even available. And I think as you get older too, and you have your own family, you realize that you only have so much time. And so sometimes it has nothing to do with like somebody not thinking about you or you not thinking about somebody else. It's just that you truly only have, it's like the pie, right? Like we only have so many slices in that day, in that week, in that month, whatever. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. And as you were talking, I was thinking of an example also with a friend. And I remember thinking, she is doing all these things with all these other people. And same thing, like I wasn't feeling like I was getting invited. And then I thought, you know what though? I haven't invited her to anything. And then I just was very honest too and said, listen, I miss you. So the next time you're doing something where there's a lot of people or whatever, can you just put me up on that list? And even if I can't make it, like I just want to know that I'm included in that because I do miss you. And I do miss that fun and that friendship that we had together. And that was even a vulnerable place to be.
And she may have even been thinking, oh, she's too busy. She doesn't have time to do these things because, yeah, we are all really busy. And having adult female friendships is harder. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's so important that you do really feel filled up in those relationships, because it really is. It's like that old saying, you may forget what people say, but you'll never forget how they make you feel. And so if you go on that and kind of use that as your guide, you will be able to know where your people are, where your tribe is. And I just can't do the light, superficial talk for too long. I mean, I get it. You got to meet people sometimes. You don't want to just share everything right when you meet someone. But I can only do so much of that before I'm like, no, we got to get down to business. Like, we're not doing this shallow talk. I just feel like at this phase in my life, time is so precious. Mm-hmm. And when I do get that time away from the family, the kids, the husband, the whatever work, and I have that time that's just dedicated to these women, I want it to have rich, deep value. And I want to walk away feeling like, yeah, I gained something from that.
Totally. Well, and it's interesting because it reminds me also of a time when shortly after my brother died, when I'd meet new people, I felt like I had to tell them what had happened. And it wasn't because I was looking for empathy. It was more of, if you don't know that this was part of my life, then you really don't know who I am. And so for me to share this was sharing a piece of me that it was truly a part of my whole self.
Right. You were never going to be the same after that happened to you. So
yeah. So to not share that with someone who maybe didn't know my brother, maybe didn't know me back in that time, it felt like you really don't know all of me if I don't tell you about this situation or tell you about this relationship that I had, because I'm not giving my full self. Because there will be times when I still cry, or there will be times where conversations feel and look different because of past experiences. And that's just my own personal one. Everybody might have something else that they're dealing with. But that's part of me being vulnerable also, is showing up and saying, I'm going to tell you all of who I am. And whether you like that or not, you can choose that on that end, right? But this is how I'm showing it.
Yeah. And then, take from it what you will. If that scared someone away, then maybe I don't want that kind of relationship with them. They're not that deep feeling friend that I can go to.
Yes.
And it doesn't always have to be so heavy. And I mean, I get that too, but I just can't do the light surface fluff talk. It's like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
I need more.
Right.
So I remember when you shared that with me, and I was so appreciative that you trusted me with your story. And I feel like that is part of what builds those friendships that then do become that sisterhood, do become that tribe. And, we talk about this all the time, but it's something that's really lacking in our society. And I don't understand why the society has separated women in such a way where we don't, I've got some circles that are amazing and we do lift each other up and we are not competitive. But a lot of times in society, it's the cat fights. It's the she's skinnier than her, she's prettier than her, or whatever the case may be, whatever they can use to just pin women against each other. When really we are so much more powerful when we are united.
Absolutely. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about this who was being vulnerable with me and sharing that there are times that she stops herself from going to certain events with friends because she feels like, I'm not skinny enough. I'm not going to look as cute as everybody else. I'm not going to show up joyful and have all the things to talk about. And I remember just sitting there listening to her and thinking, but what if you did? Like, what if you just showed up?
Just show up.
Just as you are. And you know what is possible then? Anyway, she did end up showing up that way to something that she was concerned about and had like the best time of her life. And so I think about even that, having friends where you can just show up as you are, that you don't have to worry about like all that mind chatter that goes on.
It makes me wonder where she received a message.
Yes.
That she needed to show up as someone different in the past, And we all have been there. We all have been in those circles where, like you were talking about, where you're just like, you leave just feeling like you were like on the outside edge, or you just didn't meld in with whatever was going on, and you have that depleted feeling afterwards. And I just think those are learning experiences. I think when you have that experience, when you walk away from a circle and you have that feeling, it's a note to self. That's not my group. Those aren't my people.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of them is, but maybe altogether not so much. So you got to honor yourself and respect how you feel and pay attention to those feelings. That's your soul telling you what's right for you and kind of guiding you in the direction you're meant to be going.
Totally. And I'm kind of sitting here laughing internally because I was also thinking about, have you ever had those moments where you tried to merge groups of friends or taken a friend from that circle and a friend from this circle and tried to bring that together and it didn't always go so well?
Yeah.
There are times when it does.
I'm notorious for having separate groups of friends, I think for that reason. And for the first time in my life, they've come together and it's trippy. But they didn't come together because I put them together. It happened on its own. So that was kind of cool.
That is really cool.
And I love it because now all my people are in the same space.
All the people are part of the same circle of people and it feels good. I know. I've been in so many different circumstances like that too. And I used to have, and I still do, I guess, have different circles of friends. Part of that is because I would get bored with certain things. Like one group would always do the same thing that looked like this. Mm-hmm. Then I had this other group that was like way out there doing all these crazy different things. And I was like, yes, that's fun too. All of them, or the crazy ones, doing all the crazy things all the time, that sometimes felt like too much. So then I had to bring it down and be like, no, but where are my old school homies that are just easy, and we have our own different kind of fun. But it's interesting just to kind of evaluate all the different groups. So I have been in situations where groups have come together and it went really well. And then friendships were formed like that. And then the groups where it's like, oh, okay, those two, I should have never have gotten them together. Like that was all bad. Yeah, totally. Boy. That's happened also.
Well, because everybody is different, gives different energy to each other. What works for you might not work for somebody else. It might be oil and water for someone else, So
even though you value like those two, those people separately and their level of fun, but not always bringing them together is the best idea.
Well, I even think about when you were talking about that, you're different. You go to this group for the fun and exciting. You go to this group for, your old school connections. I am really starting to get my wheels are turning about wanting to do shrooms again for the second time in my life. I did them once when I was 18, right after graduating high school. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And it was a totally euphoric spiritual experience. And I love where we're going in society where it's not such a taboo thing anymore. The research is coming back. And I definitely have friends that would want to take that adventure with me and ones that would not want anything to do with that. So I think it's just, there's different friendships for different reasons, and exploring spirituality, or you're friends because your kids are friends, and that's important to keep that going. So there's just lots of different connections you can have.
Yes.
And they maybe aren't necessarily meant to go together.
Totally. Well, and, I was listening to this podcast the other day about friendship, and it was really exploring how do you make friends? Because I have heard friends tell me that as adults, once their kids have grown and maybe they've moved, I've had several friends recently move to different states, actually. They've had to recreate circles there. And so as an adult, how do you go out and find new connections? Especially if you're working, because
easy.
It's not easy. And maybe you do make them in work environments. So that's one way. But I also know for myself, in moving to areas and not knowing anybody outside of the kids stuff, joining different groups, like having different hobbies and things like that, I thought was a really good one, because then you're meeting people that have similar interests as you. So you obviously want to do something that is interesting to you, and not just like, oh, there's a golf group, I'll go join them, and like you hate golfing, like that would not be a good idea. But maybe you are a spiritual person that wants to deepen your relationship with, Jesus. So you join a Bible study group. Maybe you are the golfer, so you go there. But there are so many activities happening all around us that I think that it is cool to step outside sometimes.
Yeah, do a woman's retreat.
Yeah, totally.
Great way to get introduced to like-minded women.
Yes.
And I also want to go back to something you had brought up earlier about just how, sometimes you got to put yourself out there. And I think I had experienced this as a young mom, where I didn't always feel super comfortable like at pickup, and I would see all of the closed circles of moms chatting. And sometimes you just got to go up, introduce yourself, put your big girl panties on, and put yourself out there. And it's not the easiest thing to do. But yeah, you got to be self-reflective. Am I having my arms crossed and not being friendly and not saying hello? What can I do differently to introduce those new friendships into my life, to create this warm, open response?
Yeah.
So,
and dropping the judgment too of others. I remember a friend and a girl I knew in high school. We didn't know each other well, but we'd pass by and wave, say hello real quick. But I thought, she seems kind of mean, like she doesn't, I don't know. She wasn't very friendly. She didn't smile much. Years later, fast forward, we go to a wedding together, and she's like the chattiest person on the planet. And we instantly formed this connection. Come to find out, her teeth were crooked during high school, and that was her own insecurity. So she didn't smile because of that and stayed quiet.
Right.
Who would have known? And her and I then became extremely close friends, and our families became super close friends. That judgment could have stopped this whole tons of memories that we've created in life. But if I would have continued on with that, like, oh, she's mean, I'm not talking to her, that whole situation may have been lost. So
I've experienced that with someone that I later found out she was going through a divorce. So you never know what chapter of the book in their life you're walking in on. So that's great to drop the judgment. Just, and you're not meant to be friends with everyone.
No.
So it's not like I ended up becoming friends with that person later after I found out that was the case. But you just don't know what people are going through. It doesn't mean they're a mean, nasty person.
You don't. But, and also we can be the ones that show up with the smile.
Yeah.
And, whether they reject it or not, it doesn't matter. But I want to show up as the one that looks approachable and fun. And if something develops out of it, great. And if it doesn't, it just doesn't. How many times also have you made friends with people just based on the kids, and then there may not be a good mesh in terms of the adults,
lifestyle,
but you're like,
or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it might be. And then you kind of have to question those relationships, and those might fit into the category of friends for a season. It's like our kids are friends right now, so we're going to be cool, but that may not be my lifetime friend, and that's okay.
Saying is so poignant. It's so true, and it shows up in my life. And it's funny because when I heard it when I was younger, I was like, fuck that. Like, these are always going to be my friends. You know, I mean, there's women that were in my bridal party that I haven't seen probably since like 2 years after I was married. So it's just, you don't know. You think it might be forever, but you sort of just have to let life ebb and flow. I also feel like relationships, people in general, are just here to teach us, show us, guide us in all different kinds of ways. My belief is we came here to learn and grow. This is Earth school. And so if you think about, you learn so much. We have some of our greatest pain from relationships. Some of our best joyous moments are from relationships and time spent together and trips and things like that. But it's all a part of a growing learning experience. And we all add value to each other's lives.
For sure.
Whether it's good or bad, it's still value.
Yes. I mean, I reflect too on relationships that have ended, and some of them didn't end very well. I had one person that literally broke up with me like it was a divorce or something. And she's like, I want all my stuff back. And don't give it to me. Drop it off. Oh yeah. All the things. Drop it off to somebody else. Like, wouldn't even see me. I'm all, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, I've never experienced something like that before. But at that time in my life, I wasn't truly understanding where she was coming from. I was looking at it like, oh my God, this person's crazy, you know? And really, when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, she was really hurt. You know, she came from a place of hurt, and that's all she knew was to cut things off, because she didn't know how to have the conversations. We tried, but things moved into a different direction. And so for her, it was like, I need no ties. And for me, I'm a Taurus. So when I look at if you read any Taurian horoscopes, loyalty, groundedness, those are major qualities. So when things start to happen like that, it does stir things up, like even in me. And I think, how could you just break this off? Like, what are you talking about?
You know, felt like you got the rug pulled out from under you with not having more explanation, or why can't we just work this out?
A little bit. I mean, she kind of did express some things to me that were, at the time, to me, were silly. But again, as somebody now who's grown a little bit from that, I can look back and go, wow, she really was hurt. She really felt like I was replacing her with somebody else. And she didn't know how to do the dynamic of sharing, you know, friends. And that's the other thing. There are people that get very possessive of their friends, like they own them or something. And it's like, no, this is my friends. That means you can't have a relationship with them. You know, and it's like, whoa.
Fuck that shit.
What the hell?
Especially as an adult. I mean, I think that's something you would kind of experience in high school, middle school, especially. But like as an adult, ain't nobody got time for that.
As an adult, like these experiences are from adulthood, which is even more crazy. Yeah. But I think that's why this topic is so interesting, because, you know, we think of friendships. I mean, yes, we think of them in adulthood, but I don't know. You already know this, but for my listeners, I've always had a little bit of an issue with the word best friend.
Oh yeah, I know. I always pause a little bit before I say it. I know, Jamie.
Sorry. and you know what? Look, again, I'm not judging anyone. This is what comes up for me when I hear this. This is my own experience. And it's one thing to say, like, this is my best friend and they've been with me for all these years and there's a lot of longevity and history. But I think the word has gotten thrown around so much now that it's a very exclusive word. You know, I'll have friends that are like, these are my 5 best friends. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm not named in that, then that means I'm not one of the top 5, but I'm a friend. And where do I fit?
Now, there's this order, this hierarchy.
Yeah. Like, and how do you get to that place? Or going back to the possessiveness talk, if I say, Greta, you're my best friend, does that mean now that you're not available to be anybody else's best friend? You know, or what if somebody claims you? Now it's like, well, no, wait. And as I've raised 2 girls, and I kind of beat it into their head when they were young, I was like, we don't use that word, best friend. And then it got a little crazy because friends would give them things that said best friend, and they're kind of looking at me like, what do I do with this? And it's like, no, receive it. It's nice. It's great. I mean, I used to write best friend with 5 of my friends too when I was younger. Yeah. But I started exploring why this was a problem for me. And again, I think, you know, when you look at like your circles of friends, I personally have never had just one person that I've gone to for everything. I have a couple people that are very near and dear. So if a hardship happens in life or something great happens in life, these might be my go-to people, but all of them have something important to share or say in my world. And then there's some that I'm close to, but maybe they weren't in my wedding, for example. Yeah. And then there are people I'm close to today that I'm like, why weren't you in my wedding? I don't know. I just always go into this weird thing. I think
it's interesting. When you say best friend, that means there's a flip side to that, right? Then there's people that are not the best friend.
Right.
And so I think that you got the necklace. There's someone that didn't get the necklace. So it can be hurtful. I think for my relationship with Jamie, and we don't even say best friend, we call each other bestie, which is probably just as cringy, but we've known each other since we were 12. And we were not best friends when we were 12. It has become, it's almost for us like calling each other sister. We have grown up and through things together that only each other understand. And especially since her and I both were going through some major turmoil and dysfunction with our families, and we kind of clung to each other like we were each other's savior during that time, because we both had parents that were addicted to drugs and everybody else just looked like they had it all together. And we felt like we were on this island until we found each other. So I think there was things in life and the way that it just sort of naturally evolved that I have no regret saying that. But I definitely felt that in how you're saying, I felt that negative feeling about best friends growing up, like through my years of just being like, well, I'm left out. I'm not the best friend. You know, they'd say it right in front of you, and it was hurtful.
Yeah. So I've always kind of struggled with that one.
I get it.
You know, and I don't know. And then, you know, songs would come out now. Songs are coming out that are fun. Yeah. But it's like, is it referring to just like one person? Yeah. That's my best friend.
That's my best friend.
Totally.
Bad bitch.
And it's so fun, right? But I don't know. I guess for me, when things start to look leveled, you fit here. And listen, in life, that is part of reality, is that you are going to have people that are going to be a little bit closer, right? And then there's going to be the ones that are a little bit more on the peripheral, and then the ones a little bit further away. And then we talked about the ones who you may not even see for years, but when you pick up, that connection is still there, you know? So I thought it was interesting to bring it up because we are talking about friendships.
Yeah, I like that you went there.
And even now, like, you know, you go to a concert and it's like, oh, these are friendship bracelets that you can now exchange with people. Like, did you know that was a thing?
But I saw a posting that you guys had with bracelets on.
Yeah. So apparently that's like a big thing too at the Taylor Swift concert, which I will be going to soon, which I didn't know about. But I think this is the point. I think the reason why this even surfaces is because we all have a longing to have some kind of connection and feel like we belong to something that is meaningful and good, right? Yeah. And so that's what friendship does for people.
Like kind of like the bracelets, because it's not just one necklace that's split in two. You could have a whole group of people and everybody gets a bracelet.
And then you collect them. You know, people give them to you, trade. Like,
I mean, I guess there still might be somebody on the outside. That's always a thing.
Right. So. And you can't
find your circle, ladies. Find your circle. And keep the circles open. I love that you talk about that. And it's a good reminder. If you are that mom at school that's picking up your kid and you've found your circle and you feel really comfortable every morning getting together with that group of moms and chatting about whatever, and you see the mom over there by herself, open up the circle. The more the merrier.
Yes.
And, you know, inclusion, I think, is so important to try to keep that in mind. And I think that's really what the whole best friend thing is even about. Is it doesn't allow inclusion if you have just the one best friend. So I think it's something to think about, how you show up in the world, how you can be a better friend. And also, going back to what we were saying before, you can also be the mom that walks up to the circle, although that's harder to do, really.
It is. You have to really push yourself out of your comfort zone if that's not your natural state of being. But you know what? Sometimes growth is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Look, if I didn't go to that mom's breakfast thing, I would have never met you. And sometimes I can be that. I'm an introverted extrovert, so I do not get my energy from other people. I get it when I'm home by myself, when I'm meditating, when my house is all clean and I've gotten all my things done. So a lot of times what I will do is, I'm constantly looking at that to-do list. So I'll say no to social things because my house is still messy, or I need to do my taxes, or whatever it may be. There's always a million things to do, right? And it's so important just to sometimes go, fuck it, and go to the thing, because you never know who you're going to meet. I met Michelle at this, we all went to this breakfast after we dropped the kids off at school, and you just never know the good things that are going to come out of it. God, I met Jackie, Coach Jackie, who we have on the show and we're now doing retreats with, because I went to a party and she was there and she was friendly and beaming and her energy was fantastic.
You were willing to talk to the people that were unfamiliar to you and that you didn't know. Because think about it. When I went to that breakfast, I really didn't know most of the people that were there. I didn't know you. I didn't know majority of them. You went to this party. You didn't know Jackie. She was somebody new that.
And more importantly, she didn't know me. And I was the Wicked Witch of the West with a green face and all. So
a little intimidating.
Props to Jackie.
Totally. But those are perfect examples of stepping out of what's comfortable and not just sticking with the people that you know and opening that up. And I love how you said that, like, look for the person that's kind of standing there alone. And you don't need to bring them into your tight circle, but just having those few conversations on the playground or right before school starts, they're just opportunities to have connection.
Because how do you know? I think as adults so often, because we're so busy and stretched so thin, we don't want to put ourselves out there. We're like, we have our friends. And you don't know what you're missing out on. I didn't have Michelle in my life before that day. And now I'm sitting here in this studio recording a podcast with her. You just don't know the beauty and the miracles that people can bring into your life if you don't open yourself up to those situations.
Yeah, so true. Yes. And valuing the people that are in your life. So this is the other thing that I love also is both you and I are very blessed to have a lot of good friends. But there are times where I think, how am I investing in my friends? And at one point I started writing little thank you or just I'm thinking of you cards and mailing them out.
Did that to me one day.
Because I think
it was amazing.
Special to have things that are a little bit outside. And when you are so busy in life and you'll think about someone or even that little text that you send out saying, hey, I just want you to know today I'm thinking about you. Those are important little deposits that you're making into people's accounts, right? And so going back to how you feel.
You had said you'd put it on a little Post-it note and I ended up sticking it on my computer so I would see it all the time. But it was like, just remember what a beautiful light you are in this world or something like that. That was just at a time when I was going through something. I mean, I don't even remember what it was, but I was like in a kind of a spot. And I got that note and it touched me so much. And I thought, what a beautiful friend that has been drawn into my life that would fill me up. Take the few minutes to write that. And I don't even remember how I think I picked up something from you and it was like on there, like you stuck it to something of mine that I left at your house or something. Simple as that. But it's like, yeah, those little extra thoughts. And you know what that did for me? It was like, oh, I could be a better friend. I could do that. So it's like when you have things done for you like that, then it can spread. It's sort of like that Starbucks coffee thing where someone buys a coffee for the person behind them. And then now that's a big thing. Yes. It's like the goodness, the kindness will spread.
Passing it forward or what it was called something like that. Paying it forward. Yeah, totally. And so there's so many little things like that, I think, that are so important and valuable that we can be doing in our life and just the meaning behind things. Today, I actually wore some jewelry and both my earrings and my necklace were given to me by different friends and they both hold different meaning. And so just to even have it on reminds me of those special friendships that I do have in my life. And then I think, when's the last time I've reached out to them? When's the last time they reached out to me? And again, not with judgment. It's more of in a place of, number one, feeling grateful that these people are even in my life. So that's always the first thing is it's like, oh my gosh, so-and-so gave this to me. I love her. So that's like the first thing. And then it's like, when have I seen her lately? Oh, it's been a little while. Okay, I'm going to send that little note or let me try to get a coffee date or a walk date. Nowadays, I feel like for me personally, my close friendship time happens when I'm walking, taking walks with friends. doing something that's like just lounging on their couch. I mean, it doesn't have to be a whole let's get dolled up and go to drinks. Sometimes the energy that's around you, and don't get me wrong, like I love that too. And I do get my energy from being around all that.
We need to do that soon, actually.
I know, we do. It's been a while. We've done a lot of walks and other things.
Date soon.
Yeah, we do, for sure. But it's like those moments when we're just, in your workout clothes or just sitting down and, feeling the wind and looking at the trees. I don't know. There's something so special and powerful about those moments.
I love those spontaneous get-togethers that's like, hey, I'm home right now. I'm pouring a glass of wine. Come over.
Yes.
And it works out. Like it doesn't always work out, but it's like just throwing out those little things. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it does, it's so good. It's usually the most fun because you couldn't plan it better.
I've had lots of friends move away from me throughout my life. And I remember that feeling, what you just described, being the hardest thing to accept because I know that they'll always be my friend. Like I know I can pick up the phone. I know I can go visit them like all over the United States. But what I miss the most is just what you described. It's that last minute, what are you doing? I'm bored. Or, hey, there's something heavy I got to talk about. Can I just pop in? Those moments are the ones that I feel like are so just special.
They are special. And you don't realize it until you move away that it is something that you may not have again with that person.
Yes.
So, you know what? I will admit, changing a little bit, slightly, the topic, I'm terrible about picking up the phone and just calling or even just sending the text. Like I said, I get in my own little world with my to-do list and it kind of takes over. And I feel really blessed that I have friendships where they do just pick up the phone and want to talk. And I tell them, I'm like, I'm surprised you even want to be my friend anymore because I am not good at that. And so it's something I really have to work on and I have to think about. And yeah, I am really fortunate that they continue to call because I don't know if I would if I was them. And I'm much better in person than on the phone. I'm just not really a phone person, which is kind of funny because we do this. But
we'd rather talk in person to
so much better. Yes.
Yes.
So that's something I have to work on. And we all could look at ourselves and be better friends.
Yeah, for sure.
There's always something we can do.
Well, something you brought up just reminded me also about the different gifts that we come into the world with. And so I think the different friends that I do have in my life throughout the years, I've had to sit back and go, okay, this friend, her gift is showing up. Like if there's a hard time, she just shows up. This other friend is really good at sending the card.
Yeah.
This other friend is a great hugger and listens and doesn't interrupt. And when you're going through a tough time, they're just all ears.
Present.
Yeah, fully present. And so that has been a big thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about as I've gotten older and through these different friendships that have developed, especially when my brother died. Because I remember at that time, I was even placing some expectations on my friends and thinking, well, how come this one didn't do this? And how come, and I was in that funky place and it was awful. And then I was reading, it was a biblical thing, but I was reading about.
It sucks when that happens though. When Steve got hurt, there were people that showed up and there were people that didn't. And it's like, that sucks.
It does.
But you kind of just have to go like, it is what it is.
Well, and everyone
people
has
show
a
up where they are.
Gift. So I'm like, wait, okay, did this person really, maybe they didn't show up physically, but they may have showed up other ways. It's hard in the moment because you're wanting, right?
And realizing that maybe you haven't always showed up too. Like,
yes,
being realistic about it.
Yeah. So I do think it's important to see all the sides of being a friend. It's a relationship. It takes a little bit of work.
It made me think of the 5 love languages because again, it's like we all have different gifts and we all show and receive love differently. And so, you might have a friend that gives you the most thoughtful, beautiful, personal gifts that just when, you get that from them, you're like, wow, they really see me. Or you have a friend that, like you said, like really pays attention and listens when you need them. And so like everybody has something else to offer, some special gift. Otherwise you wouldn't keep them in your life. Like, why are you having them around? So
if you are, then again, that's a self-reflection moment where you have to go, okay, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And there are moments where you have to do that, right?
Is my bank account getting drained every single time I interact with this person, or are they giving back? So, I'd like to think, even though I am a shitty phone call friend, that I'm giving something else. So
yes, you are in so many ways. And that's the thing. Even when I connected with you, I was getting so much from you, just your energy and how you showed up was like, oh my God, she's excited to see me every time. Like that's one of the things that
I think my dog Rue is even more excited. My dog is so funny. When we go on these walks, she comes I have to let her off the leash. She just hauls ass towards Michelle. And Michelle's not really a dog person, but
I'm not, but I do love Rue. I will take all her love and licks and all the things.
But thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that from you. And I felt exactly the same way and feel exactly the same way. I mean, we both greet each other with the biggest hugs and just, you can feel the love. And before you even said that, I wanted to share what I received from you. You are one of the best fucking listeners I've ever met. You really listen and you give back the feedback that shows me that you are invested and you listen. And then those amazing notes, the little things. You're an awesome friend. I feel very grateful to have you in my life for so many different reasons. I mean, not only are you wonderful to me, but you're wonderful to my son that's over here 24/7. Like you're a part of my village. You're not just a friend. It's a sisterhood. I know that I wouldn't be sitting in this space in my life where I just feel like everything is so exciting and beautiful. And yes, there's things that are always going a little sideways. It's life. But it's like, no, I have this part of my life that's magnificent right now with this podcast, with you, with all the things that we want to accomplish. And I feel very blessed.
Well, I do too. And I will say all that excitement and drive and everything that comes with it is because we are in it together. I mean, that is part of so much of what you bring in is this team environment and this motivation and all these great ideas and creativity. And so all that stuff is like, oh my gosh, I'm totally down with whatever you want to do. It all sounds great. I mean, that's truly, and the same thing for you. I mean, you have hosted my son plenty of times and you are the hostess with the mostest. So I definitely have inspired me to like look at my food differently and in so many other areas of my life. So I think it's not a coincidence that we were brought together and that we're here even having this conversation right now. And I think our goal for everyone listening too is that you feel a sisterhood and inclusion and in some point in your life that you have this. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked what you heard and we're your girls,
please share and add a review on iTunes so we can continue to grow our circle. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at That's My Girl Podcast.